Everybody, welcome. Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Randy. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. Really excited to have you on. This is going to be an awesome topic. Everybody, this is episode 166 of Tech Sales Insights. Really excited to have Rachel Cossar on. She's CEO and co-founder of Virtual Sapiens. We have a really cool title topic today, which is coaching conversations, human behavior change, and sales coaching. So basically, can AI help coach change sales behaviors, and can it help improve you? And she's building a great business on it. So the answer is absolutely yes. And lots of other great tidbits there as well. We're sponsored by Spotlight. .ai, who's one of the value selling sponsors of Sales Community. Awesome company. Value selling is very important in everything that we do. Also, for those that are members of Sales Community, thanks. For those that are not, Tucker will throw up a free link that you can use to join. So feel free to check us out. Lots of great content there for sure, and chatter. So by way of introduction, Rachel lives in the Boston area in Brookline, which I know very well. Great spot. And as amazing as she looks, if that's okay to say these days, she's a proud mother of a 12-week-old son named Charles. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Really, really cool. And we had met, we think, through Mary Shea sometime last year. We had Mary on, who's kind of a guru in the whole RevOps go-to-market space, was at Outreach and then MediaFly. And she's awesome in her own right. So really excited that she was able to connect us and that we're doing this here today. So by way of intro, unlike some, I don't really know you well, but definitely been very impressive and very amazing for all that you've done. You started off as a nationally ranked athlete, as a rhythmic gymnast. So I had to ask, and it was basically the one that kind of, I shouldn't say jump around, but gracefully does the dances with the, I wouldn't call them streamers. What do you call them?
Ribbon.
Ribbons.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
ribbons. So I don't mean, anyway. And then even more impressive was a professional ballet dancer with the Boston Ballet, which is insane to me. So absolutely amazing. Lots of honors that you've had, including for 2024, a lot around kind of products that count and future products that you should have. You're definitely a leader in the field of nonverbal communication and leadership presence. I'm very conscientious as I'm doing this right now, so we'll see, but facilitation as well. And then I got from Mary Shea as well. Mary says, I've been advising Rachel and Virtual Sapiens for over 2 years now. Working with Rachel and her co-founder Neil has been an absolute pleasure. They make the most of every piece of advice or introduction I give them. She has lots great to give, I'm sure. Although it's been a tough few years in tech for all of us, Rachel remains completely undaunted. She continues to innovate and move the business forward every day. I'm such a big believer in Rachel and her business. I can't wait to see what's next. I have a sneaky hunch it's going to be something very exciting. Ooh, so she's maybe letting us on to something there. So anyway.
That's awesome.
Pretty good. And I will send that to you so you have that for your files.
Totally. That's awesome. That's such a nice message.
And we also have Tucker behind the scenes helping us. So Tucker, thank you. For those watching along or listening, feel free to put in any comments or ask any questions. I always get at the end of these, I get these bunch of notes. Oh, that was great. And I'm like, okay, why don't you ask any questions? While we're going through this. So certainly feel free. So tell us more about Virtual Sapiens.
Absolutely. Well, Randy, thank you so much for that incredible intro. And thanks to Mary for those kind words. Virtual Sapiens uses AI to help professionals and sellers master their presence. That's both virtual and in person. We definitely started during the pandemic with a focus on helping people feel more comfortable and more confident on video, because it can feel pretty unnatural. Okay. But now we also help people with in-person presence and communication effectiveness.
Awesome. Very cool. I don't know if you know, I don't even know if he's still around, but when I was at EMC years ago, there's kind of the guru in Boston was a guy, Arnold Zenker. And so I remember going to him, and, you basically have to take a half day, you go into the office, he films you, you critique, all that. And, certainly being able to do it, virtually, and how important virtual presence is, as well as physical presence these days. That's amazing. So where did the name come from?
I'm so glad you asked. The name itself, I had actually just finished reading *Sapiens*, Yuval Harari, and I had gone back and forth with just friends and people at the time. I didn't have a co-founder when I first founded the company, and we were thinking about different names that I could use. That I wanted to capture the virtual reality that we were living in, but I didn't want to lose sight of our humanity. It's always been very important to me that our AI is always helping amplify human connection, humanity, et cetera. So Virtual Sapiens, I thought was an interesting play on both this idea of like right now, right, Randy, you and I are essentially virtual sapiens connecting together. And I just thought that was like kind of a funny, tongue-in-cheek way of helping people visualize our company. Yeah.
Very cool. And how did you decide to start it?
So I had been doing a lot of coaching in person before founding Virtual Sapiens. Big focus on presence, leadership presence, helping leaders and salespeople across the world really become more aware of the way they were showing up and understanding specifically that nonverbal perspective. As a dancer, obviously, I've been obsessed with nonverbal communication for a really long time. So I was doing this coaching in person, and then the pandemic started and video came online as a core channel of communication. And, it just made sense to try to play around with some AI and see if we could bring some scale to what was very non-scalable when I was doing it.
Wow. And certainly lots of use cases, but a few come to mind. One would be kind of improving for interviews, right?
Yep.
And so how does that go?
So when we started, the virtual meetings was our biggest focus, right? Because that's just the world everyone was living in. Now it's been interesting to see which industries have really latched onto the video format, and interviewing has been one of them, right? When you're going through that interview experience, the first few rounds are going to be virtual, right? It's rare for people to go into the office until they're like very, very close to getting the job. And so for people who are preparing for those virtual interviews, our software can be used to run through different scenarios to get feedback in real time, very comprehensive feedback on the behavioral metrics we cover. So it's a friendly, non-judgmental tool that you can use on demand in private to sharpen your skills.
Wow. Very cool. And then from a scalability perspective, do you have any kind of limitations? So if you have like whatever, all college student, whatever, you have 10,000 college students sign up tomorrow, does that kind of break things, or you're kind of built to scale like that?
Yeah, we're built to scale. Something that makes us very unique is all of our technology, our AI processing runs on device client side. And that just means that we don't take your video, send it to our servers and process it there. So we're leveraging each individual person's laptop power. And so if 10,000 people, to your point, were to sign up and run through our assessments or use our sidekick, we would have no issues supporting that.
Wow. Knock wood. So
yeah.
Oh, that's great. And then besides the individual, are there things that come into play kind of from a team or kind of organization perspective relative to upskilling and leveraging you as well?
Definitely. What's interesting about our focus is in terms of feedback and coaching is that it really is on the behavioral, nonverbal, vocal, and verbal metrics or elements of communication. And oftentimes that's a very specialized area, right? That's why organizations typically will pay to bring in a communication expert or a nonverbal expert to run like a half-day, full-day program, to your point earlier. And so the additional value prop that our platform provides to a manager, a sales manager, for example, is that with our platform unleashed across their sales team, they can rest assured that every single person on their team gets individualized, personalized feedback that they can track scores and progress over time. A manager has a certain level of oversight. So you can see the activity, but you can also see like on an individual level, but then also in aggregate across a team, like, are there areas of behavioral challenge that we could maybe address together?
Well, yeah, because that's a kind of a touchy thing, right? If I'm man, say if you're my manager, I'm your sales rep, and you say, okay, well, Randy, you do too many hums and haws, or you look scroungy, or your background is bad, or what, in this day and age of everyone being so touchy, it's kind of hard. But if I've got a kind of a third party resource who then is identifying those things, then objectively, it's easier for me to talk about those things.
Yeah, and we're talking about personal presence, right? So
Yeah.
facial expressions is an example of one of the metrics we look at.
Right.
It's really hard to tell someone you didn't look enthused during that meeting and then have the person say, but I was trying to focus and concentrate.
Yeah.
Right. But our AI can say, hey,
Yeah.
by the way, you didn't change your facial expression
Yeah.
at all. And is that you might be sending an impression of lower enthusiasm and lower energy.
Yeah.
Is that your intention? Because if it is, great. But if it's not, then maybe you need to think about engaging with your facial expressions a little more.
Yeah. I mean, I remember early on, I try and be self-aware and take feedback. So somebody from, it's on somebody from Dell, and they all the handlers and the comms people and all that stuff. And somebody that I knew said something like, you might want to smile, but my natural state in talking is kind of not to be like a smiley person. And then because of that, it has kind of some bad ramifications. Okay, it looks like he's mean and nasty or upset, which if anybody knows me, it's not the case at all, right? I'm kind of puppy dog and trying to be nice as possible, but then it kind of throws it off. So I always then I'm trying to, especially like now in this, try and do kind of the smiley thing, which isn't a natural thing for me to do, but I kind of have a couple notes on things, for me to do, or once in a while I have a twitch or kind of things like that. So, trying to be conscientious about those things is huge, right? And it's those nonverbal things which can throw things off, right? So if I'm doing whatever, and then they're not listening because they're thinking, oh, geez, what the heck, is he pissed off at me or what, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's all about managing your audience's perception.
Wow. Interesting. So awesome, cool business. So how do you prospect?
So I mean, definitely getting in front of our target audience with content or thought leadership has actually been a really effective way for us to prospect. We know that people in sales training or other types of learning and development, upskilling, those are great populations for us, especially now because everyone's trying to understand how they can leverage AI in a way that's actually impactful versus just gimmicky. But yeah, so we've got some great thought leadership. I have a talk show of my own that's generated a good amount of authority in this space. And that's been great exposure for us.
Awesome. Very cool. So then do you do kind of proactive reach outs, some cold calling, wait just for people to inbound, kind of combination of everything?
Combination of everything. I'll say email inbounding alone is just not effective. There's just too much noise out there. At least that's what we've experienced. But if we do a combination of email and LinkedIn in particular has been really powerful for us. I think because more so than emailing, you get an entire human profile when you do reach out via LinkedIn. It's easier for people to see that you're serious about this subject versus an email that most likely was probably automated.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Unless it comes from somebody that they know, but otherwise if it's just a blind one, then, most of the time it gets kicked. And you got some impressive customers, Fortune 10, Fortune 50, Fortune 100, some smaller ones. Any couple in particular you want to mention?
Yeah. I mean, I think particularly for this audience, right? Sales training and sales enablement is a big space for us. We just recently announced a new partnership with BTS, which is a global sales training firm. And in partnering with them, we have actually integrated our technology directly into their LMS, their learning management system. And so the fascinating thing about that is that BTS gets access to our analytics and our AI within their branded user flow experience. So at no point does a user have to leave and go to our website and sign up. Everything's very seamless for them, which I think is more and more an expectation for users, right? People don't want to have to download another app, do this, do that, right? They want everything. Like Mary talks about it all the time. Platformization. Yeah.
Interesting. And then you have some of the other AI coaching, but like some of the revenue intelligence companies, Gong and others, they're giving, kind of feedback and all that, but good on, you partnering in there, would imagine you have a whole kind of separate partner strategy as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We built our technology to partner because we're so specific and focused with our feedback. Like we're not trying to do everything, but we do what we do very well.
Wow, very cool. And then from a kind of competitive landscape perspective?
That's really interesting. I mean, when we started, this was almost 4 years ago now. There were not very many players. Now we're seeing a lot more of these like AI speaker coaches pop up. Most of the time, they're just focused on what you're saying. So like glorified counters, if you will, right? And that's great. That's super helpful. But where we differentiate and distinguish ourselves is in that computer vision aspect. Like we've spent a lot of time developing models around different types of behaviors you might want to avoid and behaviors you might want to encourage yourself to practice. So
Awesome. Very cool.
yeah.
So around the kind of, we've dug into a little bit, but kind of just the kind of title topic around just kind of general coaching, leveraging AI. Any kind of high level remarks?
Yeah, I think the discourse around AI right now, understandably, is very focused on generative AI, right? So using AI to generate that email that you're going to send out to all these people, or help you with some social media marketing, posting, etc. We're very different because, like, yes, we use generative AI in certain aspects of our product, but the core of what we do is at the intersection of AI and human interaction, right? Like we're using AI as a coach in real time to help humans, number one, become more aware of certain blind spots they might have behaviorally, and then to integrate the information our AI gives them and make decisions in terms of how they might want to rewire behaviors, change the way they're showing up. And it's been fascinating to see how people actually interact with our AI and change their behaviors as a result of the feedback they're getting. When we first started, that was a big question. Like, will people respect the AI? Will people listen to the AI? Will people make changes as a result of the AI? And we've seen that actually, as a matter of fact, the answer is yes to all of those things.
Do you find that there's I don't know the right way to say this, but kind of certain profile of folks that are kind of more susceptible, for lack of better words, to want to improve? Because certainly there's a lot, if I broad generalization, 20, 30 years ago, everybody's totally into self-improvement. Everybody want to do it, getting feedback. And then these days, it seems like that's kind of fallen off the tracks a little bit. So do you figure out that there's certain populations that are kind of more into the feedback than not, or is it just random?
I think, I would have expected generationally to be there to be a big difference. I would have expected people who are maybe a little older, a little more seasoned in terms of their professional experience to be like, I don't need this. I'm not going to learn anything from this. I know everything already. We haven't seen very much of that. I think, if anything, so long as people are, I don't know. I think partly it's the way that we've designed the way we give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent a lot of time trying to make the feedback relevant instead of just like noisy data.
Right.
And the way we deliver feedback is personalized and nuanced, but not prescriptive. So what you mentioned earlier about someone saying, Randy, you should smile more. Our AI would not ever tell you to do that because it's too prescriptive, right? We don't want people to use our tool and then say, oh yeah, the thing that tells you to smile more.
Yeah.
Because that's maybe not appropriate in certain contexts. So we would tell you, try to engage your face more. And that could be like using your eyebrows more, or, maybe you're smiling too much, right? So we always want to like leave the onus of integrating the feedback up to the user.
Gotcha. And is it kind of a one and done, or is there kind of like ongoing coaching that happens?
Yeah, we have a number of different mechanisms for feedback. So you can like do a simulated conversation, practice mirror, which is just like you freestyle and monologuing. And then we have an in-call sidekick coach that you can actually use in real time on a Zoom call or Teams call or whatever. And so you can get ongoing feedback in a variety of different environments, which we've found people tend to use our products over time because there's that variety.
So funny. I remember going back and college or big jobs along the way before you even had video cameras and everything. You just would go like in a mirror, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
practicing and everything else. So
Yep.
very, very cool. And then you've got a point of view and interesting commentary around amplifying human connection and communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we first started, the tagline was technology to amplify human connection. We've since changed it to something a little more specific because we got the feedback that it sounded like it was a dating app. Yeah, which I was like, okay, I guess maybe.
You could actually Tinder,
Right?
that could be you got a huge population there to go after,
right.
whatever those sites are called.
Totally. So yeah, I mean, I think, one of the first things we all experienced when we came on video was that we felt disconnected. We didn't feel like we could be authentic. We felt very limited on video. But then I think we realized that there are some very effective ways to use video to connect and to build relationships and build trust and rapport and land amazingly huge deals. And at that point, you're like, okay, we should collectively be honing these skills that are specific to a certain extent to video in terms of our communication and our presence. During the pandemic, it was, people were being a little more lenient because a lot of people didn't have actually no one had a choice, right? Everyone had to use video. Now, video is just a part of the communication toolkit we have to activate as professionals. And we have to be fluent if we want to be able to effectively show up and connect with the person on the other side.
Wow. And then I assume this helps also kind of building trust and rapport as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of our core communication categories, right? We look at a variety of metrics that affect your authority impression, your first impression, trustworthiness and rapport, and then energy and expression. They're like, the way we build trust it's always behavioral, right? Like you can say something, but then if you do something different, that trust is broken. Right. So there's got to be alignment in that sense. And so we do look at a variety of behaviors that support and can foster trust and rapport on video.
Interesting. I can envision us doing like a joint white paper where we talk about, here's another performance criteria CROs want to have within their sales teams, which is this whole presence. I mean, it's just, going back in my head, just, you can, how vital and important, and, in a goofy way, perception's reality, right? You could have somebody who's amazing, but just comes across, for lack of better words, as a schmuck, right? Who then isn't going to get the sale or get things passed along or follow meetings. Conversely, you have somebody who's super sharp and crisp. They may not know anything about anything. They may be bad or weak or lame, but they likely can could be more successful and progress the sales cycle, right?
Yeah, definitely. Have you? Yeah, right. Have you watched the TED Talk? I think it was like an NYU TED Talk. It's like 5 minutes long, and it's this guy who basically doesn't say anything of substance, but does all of the right things behaviorally. Have you seen that?
No.
I have to remember what it's
awesome.
called. I'll send it to you after, and you can include it in any follow-up. But to your point, we're so hardwired to pick up on behaviors in terms of whether we believe someone, right? Whether we like someone, whether we don't like someone.
Right.
Very, very little of that is coming from what people are actually saying, right? Which is why first impressions are so powerful, because before you even say, hi, my name is blah, 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 you've already in a virtual environment, right? The way you've set yourself up, your background, your framing, your lighting, are you showing up as an authority from the minute you join that call or not, right?
Yeah. I talk to college groups, and I've been doing this forever. So I go and say hi and I shake everybody's hands. But in a face-to-face environment, that's where you get that first impression, right? If it's some lame ass thing, you're like, okay, this person, whatever. But somebody comes in, hi, how are you? Great to meet you. Another thing, how are you doing today? Great. Like, even if it's the worst day ever, you always say great, right? So handshake and great, that just starts things off so much better than not, which then again ties into everything you're talking about, which is so cool. What are some of the most common nonverbal mistakes?
We touched on a few of them actually, but I think the biggest nonverbal mistake people make is thinking that it doesn't matter on video. thinking that somehow because it's more limited, you only have this rectangle of real estate that you're working on. But when you think about it, the way you show up on video is like video is the only digital channel of communication where body language really matters. And you have this rectangle of real estate, this limited rectangle of real estate that is so expensive. And the choices you make from, like setting up your background to be simple and intentional and to support the perception you want to have in terms of who you are as a professional goes such a long way. The way that you use your hands, a lot of people think on video, like, I'm just not going to use my hands at all, or they're poorly framed, right? So all we see is like their head. And then we're missing the fact that they're a human being, right? At the end of the day, you want your video to be as close to the feeling of meeting you in person as possible. And so if you're improperly framed and you're not effectively engaging your body, then you're leaving so much potential on the table.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm always sensitive, like, my hands are big. So if I go here, it's like, okay, gets kind of everything clouded over, but.
Right. Well, because you don't like the way you use your hands on video really matters. Like ideally you want to kind of be in this space.
Right.
Because otherwise this space around you is just dead space. You're not using it. You're not leveraging it. If you're constantly like this, and especially if you're in front of your face, that's a big no-no. Like our AI would say, like, don't have your hand pass in front of your face, be more out to the side.
Yeah. I saw the, yesterday, I think the CEO of ServiceNow was on one of the news channels, and it seemed to be very deliberately kind of emotion like this.
Yeah.
So I'm sure somebody coached him and said, okay, that's something that you should do.
Yeah. The steeple. Yeah. It's considered an expansive hand posture.
Awesome. Cool. Any other how about is considering, taking a drink while you're on, is that a nonverbal mistake?
I think it's fine. I mean, I personally, will tell people just be aware of where the sipping, slurping is happening with relation. Yeah, to them, because you're not going to hear it, right? But all of a sudden, the other person's getting a huge gulp, and you're like, oh, it's just like not necessary. And if it's huge, like if you've got a huge vessel of liquid, like maybe consider putting it in a smaller cup, Yeah,
that's good. Actually, I was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, go, because it is large. I just happen to randomly do it, but it probably should be something that's smaller. So excellent feedback. So you can put that on your list for me.
Yeah.
So cool. So anyway, so I get carried away here. So for those that are watching or listening along, please feel free to chime in with any comments or any questions. Just, so awesome here, talking through all this. So I also saw you did a post on fighting between your ancient brain and your modern brain. What's that?
A lot of our feelings of anxiety, a perfect example when it comes to public speaking, are as a result of things that have been hardwired into us from our like hunting and gathering days, right? When we think about our freeze, fight, or flight response, which is happening within more of that ancient brain category, right? Like you see a lion, you run, or you freeze so that it doesn't see you and perceive you to be any object of interest. The physiological reaction that you'll have, like amygdala hijack, right, is when you go from, oh, I'm a rational, reasonable person, I feel composed and present, to being in almost like a complete physiological breakdown where your heart is racing, you have clammy hands, you're starting to sweat. And if you think about walking on stage in front of a bunch of people, like there's no immediate threat to your life, right? So it's not the most rational reaction to have. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, it's a very popular fear for people, right? And so a lot of what you can practice in nonverbal communication and presence training is just understanding, why is it that I might be getting this reaction when I'm about to walk out on stage? Oh, because there are thousands of pairs of eyes watching me. That's pretty unnatural and scary. Can you change that? No, but can you leverage certain techniques to ground yourself in the present moment? Deep breathing, a few minimal stretches just to get things flowing so that you're not like a bundle of nerves anymore. That's kind of the intersection between your modern brain, which can help you think through something that our ancient brains has evolved to ensure that we survive.
Wow, very, very cool. And then with all this, are there any kind of privacy or security issues?
So, well, with our platform and any kind of AI, right, privacy is at the top of everyone's minds,
Right.
as it should be. Um, I mentioned this earlier. Our AI runs client side and on device. So the very way that you would interact with our AI is very private, right? Like we never see any of the videos that our users are getting analyzed. We don't record anything. We don't. Your video and your likeness never leaves your device. So from that perspective, we're very private. We're very secure, and we don't use your data to train and refine our models.
Interesting. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So along the way, any mentors that you've had in particular you want to give shout outs to, and maybe one or two tidbits of advice you've received?
Yeah, well, definitely Mary Shea, right? Huge shout out to Mary. She's her and her wife are investors in the company, and from an early stage, I think she saw the potential of what we were doing, which was so. As a startup CEO, you're always dealing with people saying like, no one's going to care about that, and then people who are like, actually, I think this has legs,
Yeah.
right? So she was amazing in validating what we saw as a potential market opportunity within sales enablement and sales training.
Wow.
And then there's another woman more in the leadership presence and leadership communication space, Janet Macaluso. She's been a huge mentor and champion of mine as well.
Excellent. Very, very cool. And then along the way, any kind of folks that you've worked with, kind of from a CEO leader side, or maybe going back to Boston Ballet, who was ever running that back in the day?
I'd have to just like really give a shout out to my co-founder, Neil Kaiser. This is his second company. He was in the e-commerce space initially, sold his company, successful exit. And, I had been like, I was a ballerina going into the AI space. People were like, what are you doing? But Neil saw what I had. I worked with a team of engineers to build a POC early on, and he saw what I was doing. He was really interested and wanted to be in the AI ML space as well. And he's just been such a phenomenal partner. He was the CEO of his other company, so he has that experience. Now he's the CTO, but he's a wonderful partner.
Awesome, Neil. So let's go back to the ballet. So then what are the nonverbal kind of aspects that kind of come into play that kind of were the ahas for you to kind of take away for this?
That's a great question. There's a lot of foundational principles in ballet that allow the audience to understand, the evolution of a story, right? And
right.
So
educate me, please.
Right, absolutely. So things like, and there are parallels, right, between ballet and nonverbal science. So, like the way, like the port de bras, the way you carry your arms as a dancer, is always very open, and like palms kind of open facing forward, right? Like you're never like this in ballet, you're never like this in ballet, but you're always,
like this. You're not closing people off. It's kind of welcoming.
Yeah, you're always like opening and like welcoming people in. Like when you walk out on stage, you'll do a big expansive movement. And it's always to just like announce your presence, but then also signal to the audience that you are a very important person, that they should all be watching you, right? And then if you're playing a character who is mean or violent or whatever, then the body language completely changes. You become much harsher, much more almost
all this without speaking, right? So if you're the villain, okay, this is how they're going to act, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because people will naturally do these things with their bodies. Like if you're truly excited about something, or you've just won a game or a sport or whatever, like the way
or I'm interviewing you.
Yes. Yeah, right. Like even young kids, babies will do these movements.
Right.
And so to a certain extent, a lot of them are universal, which is why they're so powerful, because people intuitively understand what you might be thinking or feeling in a moment.
Wow. Amazing. So this kind of, I'll maybe make a statement. I don't think you disagree, but kind of from the sales tech stack, right? There's hundreds or thousands of tools out there. So, and we actually have on the cover page of a sales community, I forget exactly what we call it, but kind of the preferred RevOps architecture. We have kind of all the different categories because a lot of my CRO friends kind of get lost in what everything is. So we try to kind of dumb it down by some categories. But this is probably a key one. What are you doing to? There's sales training companies, there's analytics, there's talent assessment, but kind of this as a talent assessment productivity tool is arguably kind of vital and necessary to everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's just not that much else out there that will help you understand how your audience might be perceiving you, right?
Right.
What messages are you actually sending? And we're not talking about your content. We're not talking about your slides. We're talking about the way you're showing up as a person.
And then how do you do it if you're say, like, I just speak on stage to very large groups, so can you leverage yours for that, or is it just in a kind of more intimate sense like this?
Yeah, so you can stand in front of the camera and practice your in-person speech, right? We would pick up the full body. We'd have slightly different metrics, right? Different metrics for how we look at hand gestures, different metrics for how we consider eye gaze, right? You want to like span the room. You don't want to just be looking into the lens. We also are able to support uploaded videos. So if you had a video of yourself presenting on a stage, you could upload that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was used to admire John Chambers. I would try and do it. He ran Cisco for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He would go and walk in crowds. And I was at this smaller CEO gathering in Boston a zillion years ago, and he did it. And like, I'm paying attention. My heart's racing because I'm like, okay, if he's going to ask me a question, I want to make sure I'm following along. And so then I would do that at some of these large guys, just kind of meander around. And is that considered a best practice or not?
Oh, I mean, I think anything you can do to get a little closer to your audience and get your audience activated and engaged, the better. Our tech, the one limitation to our tech is that it can just be one person in the frame at a time. So if you were to use our tech to like immerse yourself in an audience, it would be like confused with so many humans.
Wow. Yeah, I bet. So, so as a reminder, for those watching along or listening, feel free to chime in with any questions or comments. We got Tucker behind the scenes to pull them up. So, kind of work-life balance. You got Charles, 12 weeks old. So, kind of how you balancing all that?
The virtual remote work situation, I think, is just so revolutionary for new moms. As a startup founder and as a CEO and very much as the face of the company, like I certainly haven't taken a traditional maternity leave. I also just find the market's a little too competitive for that for me right now, but I have been able to plan my day around his naps. Like I can hop on a video call, right? I don't have to go anywhere. My time is so expensive now that of course I'm going to opt for the virtual meeting versus having to spend time in transit.
Yeah, works out great. I mean, leading by example, and it's a interesting dynamic. Again, generationally, what used to be done versus now, and how you're actually able to juggle it all and make it all happen. So, and we should give your husband a shout out too. I don't think I mentioned him along the way. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. He also works remotely. Right. So we both work remotely. So at any given time, if I do have an important meeting, I make sure it's on his calendar too, so that he knows that, if Charles is like, what about me? He steps in. So
you have one of those fancy color coded calendars with yours, his, Charles.
Yeah, actually we do. We have all like the nap time, feed time. It's ridiculous.
There's just something Wall Street Journal last weekend. It was really like, geez, like I wish I had that way back when, but mine are all older, out of the house. So enjoy it. Sometimes it may get frustrating before you know it, they're gone. So
I know. He goes to daycare actually. He starts next week.
Nice. Yeah. Do you have to interview?
Yeah, Brookline, interestingly, had some good options, and we were able to get in pretty quickly. The South End was the other spot we were looking at, and I mean, I think daycare across the country is really tricky.
Yeah. But you do hear where some of them, the kids can't even talk yet, right? And they go in for an interview or evaluation. Like, what, are you kidding me?
I can't with that game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No.
So as you think about kind of going forward here the next year or two or so, on the go-to-market side, any kind of challenges or priorities that are top of mind?
In terms of priorities, we're definitely looking to land more of these partnerships with sales training firms, right? To be that AI provider for them. And in terms of challenges, I think it's just, getting that warm introduction is so critical for us. It's really hard to go in cold.
Mhm.
People are simultaneously very interested in AI and then like burnt out on it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would think, except I think, personally for me, most of the executives that have done well because they are conscientious, they want to improve. So I think probably, as you kind of said before, starting with them, have them do the assessment, realize what it's like, and like,
Mhm.
wow, this is amazing. And then, go down, you can do the PLG, but, the bottom down thing, I think could work out really well for you.
Yeah, because what we've noticed, the other thing we've noticed is that people tend to take the assessment and then immediately they're like, oh, my team could use this. So and so could really use this,
Yeah.
and that's helpful.
Yeah. You probably have, I would think, a lot of times, assuming somebody has between whatever 5 and 15 direct reports, there's probably one person in particular, but they don't want to say, hey, Rachel, I want to have you do it. So, hey, this like sauce for me is really good. Hey, let's do it for everybody on our team. Right.
Yep, exactly.
You already have the answer for at least one of the people.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, time flies here when you're having fun. This has been so awesome. Oh, Tucker, can you throw up the link? Sorry, I didn't do that before. So if anybody is interested, maybe explain how you've got the kind of freebie assessment thing.
Yeah. So if you
Explain how that works.
yeah, if you go to our website, it's very, very clear how you can start, but we have a free version of our assessment. So you can go through and actually get feedback, detailed feedback on how you're coming across from a trustworthiness perspective. And then you can always unlock at a couple different levels if you want to try again, try some of the other feedback mechanisms. But yeah, anyone can sign up for free and give it a shot.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. Well, you've been awesome. Just so much great content here and feedback and advice for sure. And I can't wait to hear what you have to tell me. So as I said, for those that are members of Sales Community, thanks. For those that are not, there's a free link there. And thanks to Spotlight for being the sponsor today. Next week, May 8th, we have Lee Hacohen, who's head of sales at Reggie AI. And his title topic is, can AI really solve the pipeline problem? And I'll give you the short answer is yes. And then following week, Rich Kaczarski, who's Global Field CTO at Dynatrace. And then Scott Wood, who runs a big business at HPE. And then I'll finish out the month, May 29th, Jim Delia, who's SVP of Global Ops at Workday, and a bunch of other good things there. So, all right, everybody that's been watching, thank you so much. You'll see this kind of reposted around. And Rachel, you've been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.